autopsy is very generalized, just like some of the statements that you picked out. Oh yes, well, we saw a lot of this and we saw a lot of that. And then you say, well, gosh, if you saw that, where's the photograph to show that, or where's the proof? Because I obviously was looking for it. When a person comes in here, they're coming in because it's a sudden, unexplained, unnatural death. And so, of course, my level of suspicion is very high. So I'm looking for everything to say, because my suspicion is high, and she comes in as she does, of course I'm suspecting that it's a homicide. So I'm looking for that. And I'm ruling it out rather than really ruling it in. I'm trying to because I've ruled it in to begin with. So I'm trying to say, well, where's the evidence? Was she in a struggle? I look for that. No, I don't really see that. Where do I look? I look in my typical places. You know, does she have evidence of recent bruising in places where you expect it, don't expect it? Are her fingernails intact? She had a French manicure. All of her nails were intact. Where would you expect a woman who's being beaten and strangled, what would you expect them to do? First thing that you do when you're beat or strangled is to reach for your neck or reach for your aggressor. You're going to break nails if there's a struggle. I can see that.
Okay. Let's go through these and then add some more stuff. So Comparini said, this is a quote, I heard her say it. Okay, they had interviewed her by phone on Channel 2.
Mm-hmm.
There's a mark under the angle of the jaw on the right side called a bruise or a contusion, which is the classical kind of compression mark that fingerprints leave. Inside, there's evidence of compression deep into the neck, hemorrhage of the endothelium of the inside of the carotid artery, which usually is evidence of some sort of force applied to the artery. That's why I call this manual strangulation.
Okay. I think there are so many points here to be made. One is there are classic signs of manual strangulation. None of what she mentions is a classic sign of manual strangulation. The kinds of things that we look for in manual strangulation, if you think about it, manual means you're using your hands. What you're doing in manual strangulation is you're taking someone by the neck and you're compressing. What you look for in manual strangulation then are all of these muscles inside your neck. We reflect each one individually, and we're looking for bruises in those muscles. That's a standard classical sign of manual strangulation. Another is you look for, you have your hyoid bone in here and your thyroid cartilage. That cartilage the ends of the cartilage can break. The hyoid bone certainly can break. That's a classic sign of manual strangulation. Neither of those were present.
Tell me what you did to look for that.
One more very important sign of manual strangulation is petechia. Petechial hemorrhages, because you're not only compressing the muscles in the airway, but also these vessels that are in your neck. If you compress those, and especially if the person's fighting, then you've got this pressure, release of pressure, pressure, release of pressure. So the small capillaries in your eyes and in your mouth will break or burst. So that's petechial hemorrhages, classic sign of manual strangulation. She didn't have that. I look for it. I look for classical signs. So in the statement that you just read, I don't hear those. She said you had a bruise. She had a bruise at the angle of the jaw. Well, you can't press on the angle of the jaw and obstruct vessels or obstruct the airway. Or you can't. The angle of the jaw, I know where the contusion was. It was a true contusion. It was in here. It was the angle of the jaw. You press down muscle against bone, you can get a contusion. That contusion doesn't kill someone because it's not in the right place to kill someone. That's not a classic sign of manual strangulation. But I interrupted you. You were going to ask me.
So that was a contusion?
Yes, it was a contusion.
This sign of the hemorrhage on the inside of the carotid artery.
Yeah, I truly, it befuddles me what she's talking about. There are blood cells circulating in vessels. Endothelium, as you know, is the inner layer of a vessel. It's a very, it's like a cell thick. I don't know what she's looking at because she points to no picture to show that, although I don't know how she could. And there's no evidence in any photomicrograph or anything that she provided that could show me what she's talking about. And so it's difficult for me to comment on that.
Before we leave the hyoid-bone, you told me all of the things you did to see whether there was fracture there. Go through that.
Sure. So what we do, and particularly in this case, again, we're very suspicious that there's some wrongdoing, foul play. So what we do is we reflect each muscle individually. We take photographs of that as we're doing it. Then we remove this whole structure from the tongue through the end of the airway, basically, the upper airway. I section off the tongue and look at the tongue, look at the inside of the tongue, the muscle. I look at the hyoid bone. I take off that hyoid bone. You have to remove every bit of muscle from that to really see if there's a hemorrhage really, or fracture. And we do the same with the thyroid cartilage. Then we took x-rays and looked at the x-rays to see if there were any fractures. I'm convinced there were no fractures.
Okay.
Can we say one other thing?
Yeah.
What you'd expect from a fracture, if something is really fractured, you'd expect that there's bleeding around it. Because this is not just, you're not just snapping a bone and the bone is there in isolation. So you should see hemorrhage around it or something. And again, it isn't there.
And she did not try this. I'm going back to this carotid because she put a lot of emphasis on that in her report as well as in this interview that she did. You read her whole report, I would assume.
I did.
Okay. So this change in the carotid, you didn't see it.
I did not see it.
She did not furnish any photograph that documented it.
Correct.
Okay.
And you have to wonder why she's referring to a carotid. So I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. What could happen is someone could compress the vessels. As I said before, this is what leads to petechia. But you really can't compress one side because we have collateral circulation. So you can't really press on one side and a person, again, we're talking about something that causes this young lady to die. You can't push on one vessel in one place and say that they died of that. I can't go to court and support that if I saw it, which I didn't.
Okay. And you also said that wasn't a finding that you were ordinarily aware of.
No, it's not, again, it's not, in our literature, I know our literature on strangulation, and it's not something that's cited as worth looking for.
I didn't find it. And there were no other signs that would dispute possible strangulation.
No, and again, I just have to answer it now.
Yeah, okay. No, that's fine. And she submitted to you no photographs. You did not see photographs along with her report.
No, I did not.
And I read her report and didn't find in it any microscopic descriptions, although I did find in her report half a dozen references to her very diligent attempt to secure the slides
Right.
twice.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So she had the slides to look at.
She did.
The slides could have backed up her contentions about other contusions or maybe other things.
Correct.
She did not provide any documentation. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. I mean, I understand that most of the time in an ME practice, it doesn't come down to the microscope.
Usually it does not. Usually if you have injuries enough to cause a person's death, they're grossly observable injuries.
The drug overdose, which was the diagnosis that you rendered.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't know anything about toxicology, so was the level that was found in her...
Lethal?
Yeah.
It was. It was. And, you know, we have our texts that we go to, and we say, you know, does this meet the standard? Is this enough for a person to have died from? Yes, it is. There are arguments, you know, we know that this young lady was a drug user, and so someone could argue, well, you know, maybe it has to be higher in that person. Those are kinds of arguments that are very circular, because because we also heard the argument that she was trying to get off drugs. So if she were trying to get off drugs, then maybe a lower dose could have killed her. You can't resolve, we can't at the autopsy level or the toxicology level resolve those questions.
Okay. She had also, contemporaneous statement was she has many other injuries in the arms and she has injuries on her legs, and you dispute many of those.
Well, no, I don't dispute them at all. She did have injuries. In fact, I list each one in my report. But when we talk about an injury, we have to say, number one, is this a lethal injury? Or, number two, was it evidence of a struggle? Many of the injuries that I saw were what I called old injuries. So let's say if there was an abrasion or a scratch of the skin. You know, we all know, if we get a scratch of the skin, first it's pretty raw looking, and then it kind of crusts over. Many of her injuries were that crusted over appearance. So, you know, we don't know when they occurred, but I assume they didn't occur concurrent with the death. Other injuries, contusions are the same way. We look at contusions and we say, well, where are they? How large are they? Do they form any sort of pattern that we recognize as, you know, this is a pattern to suggest that she's beaten, or, you know, that her hands were bound or something like that. We look for that. And then what color are they to suggest, you know, that some of these contusions, again, could have occurred many days before the final event of her death. So, I can't go over everything, but I found that we ran the gamut there of what I thought was an acute injury versus old injuries.
What do you think of this statement that you reached a mistaken conclusion because you did not apparently evaluate the findings that you had in your own photographs?
Well, I guess I would say that I disagree with that statement. I think that we know that the first autopsy is the best. Not to say that second autopsy shouldn't be done, but you know, we're the first to see her. I looked at her. I had other. We re-examined the body the following day. We re-examined the body after that again. And by we, I mean myself and some other pathologists that were here at the time. So it isn't just that I think this and I'm standing by this and no one can shake me. It is, we realize a case is horrendous and could be controversial. Please give me your input, asking the other physicians here. Give me your input. What do you think? Come to an independent conclusion on this. And so you had 4 independent conclusions saying the same thing.
You had mentioned how tragic this event is.
It is a tragic event. And we're coming on the anniversary, and it's a particularly hard time, I'm sure, for the family. Our job is to determine cause and manner of death. Every person that comes in here has a story, and they're often very tragic stories. And it's our job to determine with the best of our ability what the story was and what actually caused their death and in what manner. And while we commiserate with mothers of children that die and fathers that children have died and wives whose husbands die, we commiserate with them all. But sad events don't necessarily translate to what a family thinks happens to their child or their loved one.
Okay. So if you had decided, if you had called this a homicide,
Mm-hmm.
what would a defense attorney who is defending an accused person ask you to break that?
Well, look, so homicide is a manner of death, and it's used to explain the cause of death. So I would have to give a cause of death. So in this case, let's just say I said that the cause of death was a drug overdose. If I called it the manner of homicide, I would be saying someone injected her with a lethal amount of drug. That's an example. If I say that it's a homicide and that she died of blunt force injury, I would have to produce evidence of blunt force injury. I did a complete autopsy. I found no evidence of lethal injuries. I find a bruise here, I find a bruise there. Not to say that they're not there, but I found nothing to suggest strangulation. Absolutely none of the classic signs of strangulation. In fact, Dr. Comparini says in her report, there are no petechia, no petechial hemorrhages in the eye. That's the cardinal sign. So if I go to court, I have to defend my determination. If I call it homicide, I have to defend something. I have nothing here to defend, to say that she died at the hands of another.
Okay. So, and you were surprised when Dr. Comparini concluded otherwise?
I was very surprised. Dr. Comparini came here because she examined some of our tissues, which we freely offered for her to examine. And so I stood by while she looked at those tissues, and I felt certain that she would reach the same conclusion that we reached. That she did not suggest, perhaps there are some changes in the body that occurred from the time that we did our autopsy, and she was embalmed, and she was, she was placed in a coffin, and she was shipped across the country. Possibly some changes occurred in that interim that I didn't see. But those changes, if they existed, and if she's referring to those changes, I don't know what she's referring to that could have led her to her conclusions. I think the more important evidence was right here, certainly in terms of strangulation, because those tissues were here. And so again, I stood by her while she was looking at those tissues, and I'm surprised that she's making the conclusions that she makes.
What did we leave out that you would want to be part of this report?
I'm sorry?
Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you would like to be part of this report? We're going to boil it down to a minute and 40 seconds.
I see. Oh, I guess not. I think that I understand, I guess I would say this. I certainly understand where the lay public could get a wrong idea. How could the medical examiner miss? I mean, the typical statement we hear is, well, she didn't put herself in the trash can. Well, of course she didn't. We would never say anything like that. Of course she didn't. She was treated her body was treated in a crass manner. In my typical dissection, what I'll do finally, after I've looked at everything, is I'll take the thyroid cartilage in my hands and I will open it, crack it. I crack it.
That's what you do.
And so perhaps what she saw was my manipulation of the thyroid cartilage and calling that a hairline fracture. Again, you can't ignore the fact that, you know, there would be no blood around it because I did that obviously after death.
I wondered if that's what she was talking about.
I don't know if you wanted to briefly touch on the GHB issue,
Oh,
Mr. Cohen.
yeah. Some people are talking about that too, but that's a natural postmortem phenomenon.
It is. GHB, people, it's like a buzzword. You know, people say, oh, that's the date rape drug. But that is a natural occurrence after death. It's a common finding in our toxicology.
Is there a way to quantify it so as to know whether it was a natural or unnatural?
Oh, no. And I mean, I suppose if you found whopping amounts of it, but we didn't.
Okay,
And I don't know the postmortem, what happens with GHB naturally, you know, after death, but the fact is that we found scant amounts. And
The drug you found was heroin? Was it morphine?
I believe so, heroin. They say morphine, but
And it was what would be regarded as a lethal dose.
yes.
So, just to get, for me to get straight on this, in response to her claims, you read over all your findings. Did you then re-examine the microscope slides?
Oh, no. Actually, what I did when I saw her report is I tried to go back when she refers to our photographs and to see what she was referring to. That turned out to be quite difficult because sometimes she would point to something that was on the right side and describe it as being on the left side, or refer to some photograph that really wasn't in the scope of what she was writing about. So, but I didn't go back to my report because I know what I said.
Do you also want to comment about how she mislabeled the muscle?
Yeah, I mean, she's done, she makes mistakes.
She prepared some slides herself, according to her report.
I
Right? Her
don't,
report said that she also prepared some histology slides.
okay, if she did, I didn't see them, and so I don't know.
She didn't send them to you?
No.
Okay, I'll find that. That's in her report.
Mm-hmm.
And even though she twice obtained the microscope slides from you, she didn't deal with them at all in any part of her report, and she didn't photograph
That's right.
them.
That's right. And you know, I guess, again, I know this was in the letter that our county attorney sent, that there's frequent references that the county didn't cooperate, and you know, and even at the time of her writing her report, she still didn't have all the information, and that's clearly false. She had, everything, and like you say, she asked for some things twice. So.
Welcome to Solve Crimes with Rick and Gavin. We got started a little bit early, didn't we, Rick? To kind of let everybody know or have the ability to see that full interview that Dr. Ostra from WIBV did with Dr. Vertes.
Yeah, and that's the second or third time I've watched that, and it makes me angrier every time. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Now, we have a lot of people on. We have lots of comments, and so maybe we just hop right out of the gate. There are a couple of questions. The first one that I thought I'd bring up is from Danielle. That's Amanda's older sister, and she said, Dr. Vertes was talking about the organs that they dissected and stuff like that. And Danielle said, yeah, her organs are still missing. Are there x-rays in the autopsy? Danielle, there are x-rays in the photographs. So there are radiographs that are kind of scattered throughout the photographs of the autopsy. I'm not going to show them on the screen here. I feel like that's something that we probably should protect Leslie on a little bit. Plus, they're kind of intermingled with all the other photos, so we'd run the risk of showing something that is not appropriate.
Well, you're so well versed with these, much more than I am. You can confirm we don't need to show stuff. I mean, that's not really what we do.
That's right. And just to give you an idea, Danielle, of the x-rays that were done, they did an x-ray that's kind of, her head and her chest area. They did a pelvic x-ray. They did a profile of her head. So there are 3 or 4 that are in there. And I feel like we need to talk to a radiologist before we really know, we really understand them ourselves. We, as Dr. Vertes called us, Rick, we are the lay public, right?
Yeah, boy. And I tell you, I mentioned this to you earlier today that she was so condescending in that interview, not just to us lay people, but also to to the doctor who did the second autopsy.
Yeah, Dr.
Right?
Comparini. Yeah, she was.
Yeah. Did we ever hear about, did Dr. Comparini ever see that interview?
I don't know. And
I know she recently passed, right?
We understand recently she passed away.
Yeah.
But Dr. Comparini, according to Leslie, I never had the benefit or the pleasure of meeting Dr. Comparini. Right. I feel a special kinship with her because she hails from south of the equator, where I spent part of my youth. And I wish I could have known her, but she did feel like a member of the family, the way that Leslie talks about her.
Right. Right. And what year again was the second autopsy that she had done?
The second autopsy report was released on November 15th, 2011.
11, okay.
Yeah. At least that's what November 15th, 2011. Okay. The original autopsy was released on February 5th, 2009.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so there are a couple more questions that we can hop in on, but before we do, if you're new to our channel, we really would love it if you would subscribe, because the reason that we're doing these videos and we're talking about the murder of Amanda Wienckowski is to get more eyeballs on it, to get more outrage. And Rick, the YouTube algorithm really benefits those who have subscriptions and likes and comments, right?
That's exactly right. Yep. And we notice the difference when the more subscriptions we get and the more comments. I mean, it's all about interaction. That's really what promotes videos on YouTube.
Yeah, and there are 5 other videos on the Amanda Wienckowski case on the channel. If you haven't seen any of them, check them out, because you would definitely benefit from that. Yeah. We go into depth. Okay, Danielle had another question, and I'm going to let other people outside of the family have questions too, but I thought this was a good one. She said, we know Dr. Comparini provided hundreds of photos, and that is true, isn't it, Rick?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's part of, I mean, there's so much wrong with that interview. I think to anyone who doesn't know all of the story, like we've been privy to now, she sounds plausible and she sounds like she's very reasonable, and that is not at all the case, especially with Dr. Comparini. She made it sound like they towards the end of the interview there, she made it sound as if they were completely cooperative and did everything they could. That's what it seemed like, but we know that's not the case, right?
Right. Maybe what we ought to do real quick, because I think there are probably some people who are new and don't know about this case.
Right.
Just the 30,000 foot view on this is Amanda Wienckowski was a 20-year-old woman in the Buffalo, New York area who went missing on December 5th of 2008. She was last seen going into the home of a man named Antoine Garner in Buffalo's East Side. She was dropped off by a sketchy character named Adam Patterson, who thought she was going to be in there, according to him, just a few minutes. And when it took longer than that, he skedaddled out of there. And that was the last time anybody saw Amanda alive. 35 days later, on January the 9th of 2009, her body was found inside what they call in Buffalo a garbage tote. Where we're from in Northern California, we just call them garbage cans, don't we? But they're the big garbage cans that you empty your household garbage into and then you put out to the curb.
Right.
And that can was located, when police found it, right across the street from Antoine Garner's house, but it was tucked into what's called an alcove or a vestibule of the church across the street. Kind of hidden, not really.
But still outdoors.
It was outdoors. So when police opened that garbage tote, Amanda was inside. She was upside down. She was nude, and she was frozen solid.
Yeah.
So it's a... and then, I guess, to add insult to injury, what did the medical examiner do to him, Rick?
Right. Well, the medical examiner that, if you got on earlier and saw the interview, they reported, after her being found the way you just described, they reported that it was an accidental overdose, not even given to her, that she did it herself is what they implied, right?
Yeah, just that she was a heroin addict, which she was, and that because of the opiates in her system, it must have been an overdose.
But what have we found since then?
So, yeah, it's so infuriating. I just don't even know where to start.
I know. You're an expert on this now, after doing a deep dive on all the particulars, and along with that, we have several toxicologists who have looked at this, and another one recently, right?
Yeah, that's right. So as we've been digging into the case files now, if you're new to the channel, what you don't know is that Leslie Brill Meserol, who is Amanda's mom, sued Erie County and the Buffalo PD for the police files, which they fought. And their defense was, it's an active investigation. Of course, if it was an accident, then it's not an active investigation. So Leslie was able to get those files. The total file, page count here, is over 1,800 pages. And as far as photography of the crime scene, the first autopsy, the second autopsy, there are over 400 photographs. So we know them very well. So what we discover by looking at the photographs and then by looking at the second autopsy done by Dr. Comparini is Amanda was strangled. There were bruises on her neck. There were bruises on her arm. There was a lot of... there was a lot of hemorrhaging. There were blood pools in the in her neck area. So our position is that it was obvious that Amanda was strangled, but we still have that one hurdle that we need to jump, right?
Yep.
And
well, like you said, I mean, as soon as that report came out, it pardon the phrase, but it handcuffed the police. The police could you can't arrest somebody for a non-crime, right? Which is the whole entire problem. So like you said, there's several stages to this. I mean, the first step is to get the ME's office to reverse their findings and actually rule it as a homicide. So that's where all these toxicologists come in. We feel, I think, pretty strongly that that the information's there. She did not die of an overdose.
That's correct.
Like they claim.
Yeah, real quick, Stephanie, that is a great question. What about DNA in the throat? DNA would only last 24 hours in the throat of a living person. After that, it would be washed down the digestive tract. That DNA has to be deposited within 24 hours. Okay, why don't we talk about the DNA and then we'll hop into the toxicology, Rick?
Great.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Stephanie, there was DNA found in and on Amanda Wienckowski. There was semen found in her mouth. And as you stated, anything in your mouth starts to get broken down by enzymes and starts to go down the digestive tract. But there was DNA that they could take off of that semen, and that belonged to the person who dropped her off at Antoine Garner's house. His name was Adam Patterson. There was semen found in her vaginal cavity, and there was semen found in her rectal cavity. And then there was also DNA that was found, that was taken from hair that was on her body. It was if she had been wrapped in a carpet or a blanket or something that had people's hair on it. And it was on her skin. So they took some of those hairs that had hair follicles and they found more DNA. Now, one of those people was Antoine Garner. So the hair that was found on Amanda Wienckowski belonged to our lead suspect, Antoine Garner. And then, interestingly enough, they swabbed some of the hair and they found DNA on the hair. So in total, not including Amanda Wienckowski, there was DNA from 4 male persons, 2 of which, again, were Adam Patterson and Antoine Garner. There was DNA from 3 female persons that are unknown, again, not including Amanda. And then there was partial DNA from 2 people, and they don't know if they're male or female. So there's DNA evidence all over this case.
Mm-hmm.
So let me see if there are any other questions here that are probably pretty important. Here's one from Alicia that says, they didn't even call it an overdose. They labeled her manner and cause as an accidental acute opiate. I think actually they said opiate intoxication, and that might be a differentiation without a difference, or a distinction without a difference, but it's actually pretty important. So yeah, Alicia, they didn't really say overdose. I've got the autopsy in front of me, and the most important thing here, I'll go ahead and share this screen. Is that all right, Rick?
Absolutely.
Check this out. So this is page 6 of the first autopsy, and
this one's
this whole thing is just freaking a doozy, right, Rick?
Yeah, on so many different levels. Yes.
Yeah. So to Alicia's point, the manner of death was ruled an accident, and the cause of death, the acute opiate intoxication. One of the really interesting things about this autopsy is that 4 medical examiners signed this autopsy.
I mean, and so the people who aren't familiar with this case and aren't familiar with those types of procedures, we spoke to a few people, and one of them was our in-house detective, Joe Cefalu, and he found that extremely odd. This wasn't Elvis Presley. This wasn't a high profile at the time, right? It was not a high profile case. It was something that unfortunately happens a lot in East Buffalo. Someone either overdosing or being killed. And like you had pointed out to me at one point, it was shortly after the holidays. So there may or may not have been shortage of staff, and yet 4 medical examiners signed this.
They took the time to do that during the time of year when they're most busy. It
just seems like a cover your butt type of a move,
Yeah, at the very best, it seems like a cover your butt type of a move. At the very worst, it seems like a complete conspiracy to me. It's but yeah, so
well, why else would a medical examiner's office fight a second autopsy? right?
Right.
I mean, there's something there. Why would they have a problem with that if there wasn't something to cover?
Yeah. Cheryl has a question here. Let me add it here. Is there any reason to find the other people related to the DNA? Would it do any good? What do you think about that, Rick?
Well, so correct me if I'm wrong, but once the ME's report came out, all of that testing had to stop, right?
Yeah, they got DNA tested and they uploaded the samples that they had to both their local database and to the national database.
CODIS, yeah.
Yeah, to CODIS. And Cheryl, your question being, is there any reason to find other people related to the DNA? Absolutely. We want to know
Yeah.
who the 2 other men are, the 3 other women are, and those 2 other unknown persons.
But we got to get through this, over this first hurdle first.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. That's a good segue, Rick. Let's talk about that first hurdle. Okay. If we go to the toxicology report, I'm going to share my screen with you guys again. Now, there were 3 toxicology reports that were done, the main one and then 2 supplementals. When we go down to the area that is the opiate area, there was morphine and there was codeine found in her body, in both her blood and in her liver, at very, very low levels. These, less than 0.06 milligrams per kilogram in the liver and less than 0.02 milligrams per liter in the blood of like codeine and of morphine. The Diane Verdes said, I wrote down what she said. She's like, when Dr. Ostro asked her, she goes, was it lethal? Yes. She thinks that amount of codeine and morphine in Amanda's body is lethal. But the most important thing, Rick, you know this, is this right here. It's not. This guy right here.
Yeah.
6-monoacetyl morphine. And and the fact that it's negative. So I think let's just take a moment and we'll show everybody what we've learned about 6-monoacetyl morphine. Does that sound good?
Sure.
We're going to talk chemistry here for a minute. And we're going to keep it simple because that's the level at which I understand it. But specifically, I want to talk about what happens to heroin when it gets into the human body. In Amanda's case, she injected it directly into the bloodstream. Heroin is almost the exact same thing as morphine. The difference is that there are 2 acetyl groups in heroin molecules that aren't in morphine. These groups work to increase the half-life of the molecule, making heroin's effects last longer than morphine. Now, when heroin enters the body, one of the acetyl groups gets hydrolyzed spontaneously. No metabolism has taken place in the way that most of us think of it. What I mean is no enzymes make this happen. Basically, it just gets wet, and that converts the heroin molecule into what's called a monoacetyl morphine. Specifically, it's either 6-monoacetyl morphine or 3-monoacetyl morphine, depending on which acetyl group gets hydrolyzed. Next, enzymes in the blood, liver, and brain catalyze that second acetyl group, and the 6 or 3-monoacetyl morphine is then converted into morphine. Morphine then binds to the opioid receptors in the brain, which triggers the release of dopamine. And that makes the user feel an intense rush of euphoria, among other sensations. Many people don't know this, but the human body actually produces morphine itself, but at very low levels. When high levels of morphine are introduced to the body, there's a detection system that knows there's too much morphine in it. So it starts toward getting rid of the drug by flushing it out through the urinary system. And this is why urine drug tests are commonly used by opioid recovery clinics as a way to know if a patient has been using heroin. They look for 2 things in the urine. You guessed it, morphine and monoacetyl morphine. Usually toxicology labs test for 6-monoacetyl morphine. Now, there are a lot of variables that go into the metabolism of heroin, but in general, morphine is flushed out of the system through the urinary tract in about 7 days. 6-monoacetyl morphine, however, is completely flushed out of the system in about 24 hours. So when heroin recovery clinics test a patient's urine and they find 6-monoacetyl morphine in that urine, they know that their patient has taken heroin sometime in the previous 24 hours. Now, forensic toxicology labs are full of very smart people with lots of experience. So they have standard tests that they use to test the blood, bile, brain tissue, liver tissue, gastric contents, and yes, the urine of the bodies of the victims that come into the medical examiner's office. See what's listed very first right there? 6-monoacetyl morphine. And look, 6-monoacetyl morphine is something that they were looking for on Amanda's toxicology report. It came back negative, which means no 6-monoacetyl morphine was in Amanda's urine. I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking if Amanda Wienckowski's urine didn't have any 6-monoacetyl morphine in it, then she couldn't have overdosed on heroin. And you're right. So there is the simple story. Rather than having to repeat it, we just kind of showed you a clip from our last video. That 6-monoacetyl morphine, Rick, that means no overdose, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And
Steve,
we just got like I said, another report backing that up.
Yeah. So we can share that real quick. This is a report from a man named Ted Simon. We talked about this a little bit in our last video. He did an excellent report and basically found, let's see, in the conclusions that the concentrations of codeine and morphine reported in the samples of blood and liver from Ms. Wienckowski in comparison to concentrations observed in prior poisonings from these drugs, attributing her death to acute opiate intoxication is highly unlikely, not supported by the body of scientific evidence. He says that, the levels of codeine and morphine were in the expected range of pain management. And then he talks about the cannabis that was in her system, the alcohol that was in her system, and the GHB that was in her system. And we can talk about that a little bit more as well. But yeah, we're very confident there's no overdose here.
Right.
Yeah. So Steve, you asked the question, would those amounts kill a non-user? And according to Dr. Simon, the amounts that were in Amanda's body were commensurate with somebody who was their, what do you call them? Therapeutic levels. So if you were taking Tylenol with codeine, those would be the levels that would be in your body.
And she did have a prescription for some type of pain management at the time, right?
She did.
Yeah. So that explains that.
Yeah. According to her mom, she had a prescription for Tylenol with codeine number 3. Yeah.
And according to everything we've seen, that right there, those levels are commensurate with what they found.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I showed this before, but Alice Ayers, welcome back. You've commented on our live streams before. Thank you very much. You're saying you haven't heard anything about this case. Are they intentionally trying to keep it without exposure? What do you think, Rick?
Well, and I saw a comment earlier from Jason. It was quite a few comments back while you were showing your report. It obviously we are many years after the fact. At what we're talking about right at this moment. I think there was exposure at the beginning, but you know how news cycles, there's other things to talk about, and clearly, for our purposes, we want to, and certainly Amanda's family, you want to keep it out there in the public eye. And I think coming up with the stuff that we've come up with now, as far as the toxicology reports, I think that qualifies. So the whole idea here was to put public pressure on the medical examiner's office so that there's kind of a public outcry. Because if this could happen to Amanda, how many other people has this happened to in Buffalo?
Yeah, and my fear is that something similar, of course, not exact. There's only one Amanda Wienckowski, as Leslie has said, but yes. Similarly, in fact, we know of a case just today in Buffalo where something similar has happened to a young lady, right. And getting back to your question, Alice, about why does nobody know about this? That is really a shame. They did cover it locally in Buffalo quite a lot on all the major stations, and Leslie did a really good job, don't you think, Rick, of kind of keeping the conversation going. Remember, this happened. She was found in January of 2009, so we just passed the 12th anniversary of finding Amanda. But it's such an outrageous death. More people should know about it, don't you think, Rick?
Absolutely. And, going by what you just started to talk about, it's, I'm sure Leslie and Danielle and the whole family is proud of the fact that it seems like Amanda's legacy is kind of going into play with this new case, right?
Yeah, this is the case of Tierra Lott, 22-year-old Buffalo woman. This was just reported on WGRZ. But she went missing January 29th. And what was weird about this, Rick, is that she was last seen like on a live chat, and she had bruises, and they started to ask her what's wrong. And that's when the live chat went dead and nobody saw her ever again. They believe the last person that she was with was her boyfriend. And just today, she was located, disposed of on the train tracks.
In East Buffalo?
In Buffalo. I don't know exactly where. But, while they searched for her over the last couple of weeks, they had found items of hers. But the train tracks is where they found her body. Now, what does that mean as far as Amanda's her legacy on that?
Right.
Do you want to explain that?
I think you know more about it than I do, but it's something that Leslie worked hard to accomplish so that this type of thing doesn't happen again, and that there's actual laws, basically, I mean, not that you, hopefully, it's sad that you need a law for this, but a law that actually holds people accountable for basically the way they dispose of a corpse, right?
Yeah. So the way the law was written before, it was kind of written towards like the funeral home industry. Don't dispose of a corpse incorrectly. And if they did, it was a misdemeanor. So in the case of Amanda, if they couldn't prove murder, but they could prove who dumped her in that garbage can, that person would get a slap on the wrist. It would just be a misdemeanor. But thanks to Amanda Lynn's law, and I'll share this announcement from the New York State. This was back in 2015. Thanks to Amanda Lynn's law, the offense of improperly disposing of or concealing the death of a human body is now a Class E felony, punishable with up to 4 years in prison and up to $5,000 fine. So, I mean, that's one good thing that has come out, but it does seem like a little bit too little too late for Amanda. Tierra will benefit.
Well, definitely for that, yeah. And not only that, but we're also, Leslie has pushed, so hard for so long that we've also, and because the ME's office has refused to change their findings, we're also running up against statutes of limitations on things that they could have charged people with back at the beginning, and now they can't, right?
Yeah. And M just says Tierra Lott was found on the east side of Buffalo.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's what other questions do people have about the case? I know that we've kind of been kind of vomiting out all of this information, but I'd be really curious to see what other kinds of questions you might have. Danielle said just now that if we can change the cause of death on the autopsy report from the ME, which will then change it on her death certificate, then there are more things that will come into play. Glenn says, so anyone involved in cover-up in any way, will they be charged or no? If you're asking about the Amanda case, Glenn, which I think you are, and I'm not a lawyer, but I believe not, because it happened before the law was changed. In the case of Tierra Lott, then her family will get that benefit.
Right.
I mean, it's something. It's something, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's it is something. It's not. It doesn't make everything okay for any of these cases, right?
Right.
But but it is something.
Yeah.
Well, let's put it this way: had Amanda Lynn's law been in effect back then, it might have been one thing they could have put on Antoine Garner or someone else, right?
They could have, yeah. Had that been a thing back then.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Sharon Prost says, I've been following Amanda's case since she was found. I'm not a detective, but I've always had issues with how things were handled. Yeah, I don't think you're alone.
She's not
Sharon.
alone. No, exactly.
Yeah, it's a sad thing. Let's see. His DNA in her throat, Stephanie Gallo. Does anyone think, here, we'll go up to the first one. Does anyone think that Adam Patterson needs more of a light shown on him because his DNA was found in her throat? What do you think, Rick?
I mean, I think the two of us feel that way. I mean, we both have daughters. You don't have to have a daughter to feel this way, but it does factor into it when we see this kind of a thing. Yeah, I think he definitely needs a light. It wasn't just Antoine, obviously. We know that. As far as, so yeah, I think he was someone who, from what I understand, was, basically a trusted, the family trusted him, right? And so for this to come out, it's very disturbing.
Okay, so why don't we talk about that just a little bit? Adam was not an unknown person to Amanda's family. Adam, from what we understand from talking with Leslie and Danielle, Adam was a friend of Amanda's stepfather's from way back. And when they were little girls, they remember Adam coming over to the house. They remember him. Now, Amanda lived close to, Leslie and her family, they lived close to Niagara County Community College. And Amanda was getting her life together. She was scheduled to check into a Suboxone clinic, a recovery clinic, the following Monday after her disappearance. And, she was enrolled in school. She was set to start school. She was really kind of turning things around. And one of the decisions that was made that I think in hindsight, of course, is 2020, was a poor decision was when Leslie moved the family away from that area. Amanda wanted to stay close. She wanted to stay close to school. And that's understandable. And so she moved in with this Adam Patterson who said that she could stay with him for a little while. And it wasn't a permanent thing because Amanda's older sister was moving back to the Buffalo area, and they had planned on getting an apartment together. So it was kind of a stopgap, right? I just need a few weeks, and that proved to be fatal. That was,
I want to make a point that, considering we just went over the toxicology report and everything, all the things that you're saying right there, we don't know every single detail about the evening that essentially we know that she was murdered. But the toxicology report not only shows that she didn't die of those the stuff in her system, but it also goes to the point of what you're saying. She wasn't loaded.
Right. She hadn't.
So it seemed like she was on that track of cleaning her life up.
Yeah, she hadn't had heroin specifically in her body in at least 24 hours.
Yep.
Now, somebody who is addicted to heroin, she may have, Antoine Garner was a known drug dealer, though he wasn't a dealer of heroin. As we understand it, he was a crack cocaine dealer, and that was Adam's drug of choice.
And Adam admittedly drove her there, right?
And Adam drove her there. So yeah, now Sharon, real quick, we kind of got that up on the screen. Then we're talking. So common sense says that no one is going to strip down, climb into a garbage can upside down,
Yeah.
and allow themselves to freeze to death. What do you think, Rick?
It doesn't really need to be said. It's that obvious, right?
Yeah, somebody did it. Somebody definitely did it. You know, I want to be fair on this kind of stuff because it's really easy to get worked up about just how salacious this case is. And actually, that reminds me, Rick, we should talk about some of the salacious things, kind of put some rumors to rest. But
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
but it is a common practice when somebody overdoses and they're having a party, they're with other people. It is a common practice.
Well, it's common practice in that area, right? In
Well,
that part
well,
of
for
town.
this type
And
of person,
similar areas around the country.
around the country, it is common practice to dispose of a body in a very, I guess, what would you say, disrespectful, egregious, just
Again,
disgusting
another
way.
cover your butt situation, right?
Yes.
That's really what that is. They don't want any law enforcement around.
Yeah, that does happen. People
Yeah.
don't overdose and crawl in naked into a garbage can and die. That does not happen. But we know that it was not an overdose. It was not an overdose.
Not only that, but her body was not there for 5 weeks.
Yeah, that garbage can wasn't seen there. That's interesting, Rick. So December 7th, 2008 is the day that Leslie finds out that Amanda is missing. It's unlike Amanda to be out of touch, and they've all been trying to reach her, and now they track down Adam, and Adam takes her. She makes Adam take her to Spring Street where Amanda was last seen going
Well,
into
that's
that
his
house.
story.
Yes. Okay. But Leslie camped out there in front of that house for a month. She did not leave. She would have seen that garbage can right up there. It had been, Amanda's body had been moved. Yeah.
Yes. Well, not only that, but hidden. Either, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm not going to, suggest where, but it was not there. And police had, I don't know if they looked at the church, but the police had been around once she was missing. They were looking, and that kind of stuff. And not only that, but the church would have seen it.
Yeah. This is an area of town where there is police presence, like frequent police presence. So a blue garbage can up in an alcove of a church across the street from what is basically a housing project, that is a suspicious thing.
And ironically enough, there was a be on the lookout report for that specific garbage can.
Yes, there
right?
was.
Because it was stolen from Antoine's neighbor.
That's correct. Yeah. The garbage
So
can
it had been
itself
somewhere.
was from the neighbor. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Now, if we want to go down the road a little bit more of conspiracy, Rick, there were cameras.
Yes, I was just
in
about
the
to bring
area.
that up. Yeah.
So there were cameras that were like on the light poles because, again, these are all housing projects that are owned by the city of Buffalo. And then there was another building that was perpendicular to the church that had a perfect view up the street where they would see on one side Antoine's house and on the other side the church, camera pointing there. And that place was called Friendship Manor, and those tapes were never found. Those tapes all disappeared.
Right. Convenient for who? That's the question, right?
I mean, that's the $64,000 question. Who knows, right? Let's see if there are a couple of statements here, or questions that we should put up here. Okay, Johnny Mac at the track. I like your style, Johnny Mac at the track. Patterson's written statement was damning.
Some of it was.
Yeah, and if you go back to the first video in the Treated Like Trash series, you can read Adam's statement. You can also go to our website, solvecrimes.tv, and you can go to Amanda's case page and you can read that statement.
There's a ton of stuff on there. So if you're unfamiliar with the case, you'll see a lot of information there.
Yeah. Let's see. M, when did Antoine's grandmother report the garbage can missing? Okay. It wasn't actually Antoine's grandmother's
Right.
garbage can. So
Right.
Antoine was it was Antoine's grandmother's home. He was living with her at 157 Spring Street. When Leslie went with the police on December 7th to 157 Spring Street, police went inside. They looked inside. They didn't find anything immediately. And as they came out, they asked the neighbor, have you seen anything suspicious? And she said, yeah, my garbage can is missing.
Didn't she also bring it up when she was being questioned about another attack that Antoine was being questioned for?
It wasn't the other attack. It was after Amanda's body was found.
Okay.
That neighbor was brought in for questioning, and they're like, there's a written statement, and there's a written report on this in the files, and they asked her, have you seen anything suspicious? She's like, well, yeah, I already told you guys, my garbage can has been missing, right? So it was missing at least a couple days prior to December 7th. Yeah. So let's see if there's anything else there that anybody let's see. Wow. Bolo for the trash can is what Alice says. Yes, there was a bolo, and I can actually bring it up and find it for you real quick. If you guys can be patient with me, maybe Rick can do like a musical number while I'm deep into my files or something here.
Sure. what genre would be appropriate here?
Right. Give me just a second. I'll show you.
So what is it you're pulling up?
I'm the bolo.
Oh, right. Okay.
So there was
I didn't know that they could put a bolo out on a garbage can.
So let me show that to you. So this is the bolo. Homicide is currently investigating a missing persons report of Amanda L. Wienckowski, white female, 20, date of birth 6/2/88, of Lewiston, New York. She is 5'3", 100 pounds, blue eyes, blonde hair, tattoo of butterfly on her back, and a rose on foot area, last seen on 12/5/08 on Spring Street, Buffalo, New York, wearing brown leather jacket, jeans, knee-high black boots, and then, that sort of thing. And if you scroll down, there's the actual bolo. This was the request for a bolo. This is the bolo that went out. This is the poster that went out with the bolo and a picture of the garbage can. So
yeah,
they believed that she was going to be found in that garbage can.
And what date was that put out?
Let's see. She requested that on 1/5, so 4 days before Amanda was found.
I can't help but, while we're showing all this stuff and the struggles that the family has had just keeping this case alive, it constantly, throughout this case that we've been doing, investigations on and talking with people and reading the documents, I can't help but realize that had Leslie and the family not done what they've done, this case would have just disappeared.
Poof.
The beginning of December 2009, right?
2008. Yeah, it would have been done.
Or I'm sorry, the beginning of the year of 2009. Yeah. Danielle
Wienckowski, again, this is Amanda's older sister. Adam called me first. This is important, guys, because this is a witness talking, right? So Adam called me first. He said he took her to 157 Spring to get drugs, and she never came back out. And he repeatedly said that it was a drug deal gone bad. It was a drug deal gone bad. And Danielle's response to that, and sorry to put words in your mouth here, Danielle, but I've heard you tell this story as recently as yesterday, was, you did not take her to the East Side. We have no drug dealers in the East Side. Why would you take her to the East Side? So
right.
Very suspicious.
Well, this is one of those cases where, consider the source. I say that quite a bit. You do need to consider the source there. And none of these people that have come in as witnesses or been questioned, they just don't seem reliable. They don't seem trustworthy. All of them are covering themselves. You know what I mean? So it's just so hard to take any of that as, I don't know. They just don't hold water. Until you can get a corroboration somewhere.
A good example of that is Adam's first and second statements.
Right.
Adam's first statement was, I met Amanda at a bar. That's what he said. Yeah, I met Amanda at a bar. She, and it was like that. And then the next day he's like, I told a lie. I actually picked her up. She was a prostitute. And that's how I met Amanda. But no, that's not how you met
Aren't
Amanda.
both of those lies?
They're both lies.
Yeah, exactly.
You met Amanda when she was a little girl over at your buddy's house. That's how you met Amanda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, Alicia's saying, "Sing, Rick." This is, you really should have taken that opportunity to show us your pipes, Rick, because you have them.
yeah. Yeah. Just doesn't seem like the
Probably not the
appropriate time.
venue. It's not the time or place. Yeah.
Nope.
Sheila asks, "Did they ever find Amanda's clothes?" No, they did not.
And that is negative, right? Exactly. Well, I mean, they had 5 weeks to do whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
It's easy to get rid of evidence when you have 5 weeks.
Yeah. Let's see.
Because I still question, you and I have talked about this. I still question, Antoine, I'm pretty sure was not in the Mensa club, but I just can't picture this guy wheeling that garbage can across the street from his dang house and leaving it there. So that brings up all kinds of other questions. Who would have done that?
Well, the way that this housing project is set up is they're row houses or townhouses. So there's I don't know how many, 8 or 9 of these little...
I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you happen to have that aerial photo?
I don't.
If you don't worry about it.
I don't have it on the spot, but...
Okay, that's okay.
But basically, it's a long row of houses along the street, and the garbage cans were kept behind the house. And so in order to get that garbage can, you have to take it all the way around the entire... because her... Antoine's grandmother's house was right in the middle, basically, right? So they'd have to wheel it all the way around and then across the street. It's interesting. Let's see, Leslie.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure that I answered that last question that we had up there. Sorry about that. It was Amanda's purse was found in Patterson's car. A young girl does not leave her purse in the car.
Right. And his claim, if I'm remembering correctly, was that he dropped her off and then went and sat in a parking lot or something.
Yeah. Yes. His claim was she was going to be right out. So she left her purse and I was just going to wait for her for a few minutes. Again, drug deal, right? Going to go in, going to come out. And then she didn't come out and she said, "I'll be a few minutes." She texted him or called him. So he went and, bought some lottery tickets, and it's completely sketchy.
I mean, it just stinks, man. It
really
just
does.
stinks. And none of that explains his DNA where it was found, right? Just doesn't explain that.
It does not. It does not.
No.
Leslie, but many
Bunch of
times you take a jailhouse confession. Okay, Leslie, once again, everybody, this is Amanda's mother, Leslie. So I don't want to give away too many details here, but there are multiple, and I would more than 2. There are multiple jailhouse confessions where somebody that was there was kind of telling somebody else in prison what they did, and those people came to police. So.
Yeah.
I mean, and all of that would be awesome if we can get past this roadblock of...
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Antoine himself is really the only one who could confess and have the police take notice, right? I mean,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, people saying that, someone did it or pointing a finger, I mean, the police are really just throwing their hands up. They can't do anything about it. And at first we thought maybe they had really dropped the ball, but once we read more into that report, it sounded like they got a lot done.
It does feel like they did
before they got their knees cut out from under him by the ME's office.
Yeah. Glenn says, thought they found her earrings in his garbage can. Actually, it's a little bit worse than that, Glenn. For him, it's better for us, but it's worse than that for him. So Amanda was wearing, and I know this because of images from the medical examiner's office. Amanda was wearing 2 studs in each ear. One was like a diamond stud, and I don't know that it was specifically a diamond. It could have been a CZ or, some type of jewel, but a clear jewel, and then a pearl. And she had both of those in her ears. When she was found in one ear, I think it was her left ear, the diamond one is missing. So pearl on this side with an empty hole, diamond and pearl on this side, and that stud was found inside Antoine Garner's house. That is in the police report. Thanks for bringing that up, Glenn.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing too, again, going back to the credibility of a lot of these witnesses or jailhouse snitches, whatever you want to call them. I mean, clearly people who are, if they're incarcerated and they're offering up information, you obviously have to have, you have to take their statements with a grain of salt, especially so far after the fact. But I think, I mean, it just seems like, was there like 80 people at Antoine Garner's house that night? It just seems like there's so many people that claim to have been there or around there. It just seems to be too much.
Well, it doesn't seem to me like Antoine was keeping it any big secret. It was like, I think that there probably
the circle he was
that know
in.
about
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Right.
I think there probably are that they talked about that. Let's see.
It makes me feel like it was very well known after the fact, like between the night she went missing and when they found her, that, he was probably, if not panicking, but at least seeking out help and trying to figure out what to do with her.
And I think that happened in the beginning. I think it probably became braggadocious later, right? It was just talking about how, I did this.
Yeah. Well, knowing his past, that seems about right.
Yeah. Okay. Diane, why has it taken 12 years to get some answers? Why didn't they try harder to get answers when it happened? How could this be covered up so long? Why doesn't the news pick up this story again? Diane, those are 1, 2, 3, 4 excellent questions.
Exactly. We have those same questions.
Yes, we have those same questions. It really, again, and I'm sorry to be beating this horse, but it boils down to that cause and manner of death. Once that was, and there are people that will disagree with me, but those who have spent as much time in these police files as I have do agree with me, right, Rick? The Buffalo PD were putting together a solid case, like an impressive solid case. All of the pieces to this puzzle are contained in those 1,800 pages, and they had. I mean, I can't remember the number offhand, but probably 4 or 5 detectives that were working on this in different manners, and I've read all of their reports. They were putting it together, and then as soon as the ME, Dr. Verdes, and those 3 other MEs said this was an accident, then what does homicide do?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that we keep coming back to. We keep saying that the report, the autopsy report from the ME's office in Erie County, that it's a hurdle. It really is the only hurdle, because nothing else matters until that's changed.
Yeah, I feel like I look at it like a series of dominoes, right? If we can just push that domino down, the rest of them will fall.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look at how many pages the police report had up into, the first week of February. Can you imagine what would have been there had that ME's report not said that and kept it an open investigation? It would have been incredible.
Yeah. Ken Monaco, the cover-up and deception must break your heart. He's talking to Leslie. If Amanda was my daughter, I would never give up till the murderer was brought to justice. You have an opinion on Leslie's endurance, don't you, Rick?
Well, I just, I think we all marvel at it, and we do not blame her. I mean, it's such a terrible thing for her to have to live with, 24/7 since it happened. Of anybody, I mean, I think the whole entire family, sees this as a tragedy, but Leslie lives and breathes this, and rightfully so. You can't, I mean, we have zero to say about that, right?
That's correct. That's correct. We're not in her position, but Ken, you echo what a lot of us echo, just that, 12 years of this, I've described Leslie as the Muhammad Ali of moms, right? She is not going to be beaten on this. And, yeah.
Well, if it takes 24, this will be the same.
That's right. That's right.
That's
I really think,
and I don't blame her.
I really think with the proper pressure on the DA's office, like those of you who are watching this, the proper pressure applied to the DA's office will get them to change that cause of death because it's provably wrong.
Not only, this is a good place to add this. If any of you are watching, one of the things that you can do to help is to sign up for Amanda's Army. Right? You want to tell them how to do that?
Yeah, Amanda's Army is I do too much of this. Amanda's Army is an email list that we put together that we will blast out anytime we need action. We need somebody to help us do something. That's right, to mobilize the army, right? So if you go to solvecrimes.tv, which is our website, you'll find on the front page there's a picture of Amanda Wienckowski. That will click to her case page. When you go to her case page, at the very top, there's an orange bar that comes down that has a little join button. When you click that, you can give us all we're asking for is your first name and your email address.
Yeah, and that's a super simple thing. People keep asking what they can do to help. That's pretty simple.
That's it. And we will not sell it. We will not use it for any nefarious purposes. And you can always remove yourself. Yes, anytime.
You chose.
Anytime. Yep. Let's see.
Yeah, what else we got?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, Rick, it was maybe the salacious rumors. Maybe we can address those one more time.
Yes, please do.
Go ahead. What's one of those that drives you crazy?
Well, the thing I keep saying when we run into this is, why do there need to be rumors? This case isn't salacious enough with the facts, right?
Right.
That are already there. Why do we need to exaggerate things? One of the things that we heard at the beginning was a rumor about her tongue being cut out or something like that, right? Something to that effect.
And when we read that, because that wasn't just a rumor, that was in a news article.
Right.
It had been written by a journalist, and the way it was written,
because it's salacious, right? and
Yes.
And at that time there was nothing to refute that. And I think I'm not sure of the timing on that, but we do have a lot of evidence that says that Amanda had been used as an informant. So it kind of went like a mafia thing, right? Like they cut her tongue out as an example or something,
Yes. The way there were two different rumors. Either she bit her tongue off or she had her tongue cut out, like she was an informant that was caught. Here is the truth. And this comes from photographic evidence. Amanda did bite her tongue. There are bite marks on her tongue. She did not bite through her tongue. She did not bite off a piece of her tongue. Her tongue was intact. It was not
cut off. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other, and that's actually really important because many of you in the Buffalo area will see Leslie at, the rallies that she holds, because she's trying to get people to remember her daughter. And I've actually been to one of those where somebody grabbed a bullhorn and said that her tongue was cut out. Like, stop doing that. Stop saying that.
You're not helping.
It does not help.
Right.
Yeah. The other one that really bothered me was it was the same kind of thing, that her hair had been cut off.
Or more like chopped, right?
Yeah.
Like chopped off, like an aggressive thing.
Yes. As if, again, you were an informant. I'm just going to, I don't know.
Right.
Denigrate you or
and
disrespect
again,
you or whatever.
Autopsy photos show that it was not. That's not true.
That wasn't the case. Now, where that probably came from, again, like the tongue, she did bite her tongue, but it was not bit off, right? So there's a little bit of truth. Amanda was frozen, and she had been deceased. There were broken hairs, right? There were hairs that broke off, but she still had most of her long blonde hair. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these rumors, they go, it's like that telephone game when we were kids, right? It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And we've actually, both of us have talked to people that live in Buffalo or grew up in Buffalo, and they all remember those rumors.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing to refute it because
well, hopefully this will be
the files were kept confidential. Diane, why is it taking non-police to work on this to get the real true out? Dr. Simon, Alicia Beauchamp, Leslie, and both you gentlemen, and I'm sure many more. Diane, there are many more. And many of those people just want to stay anonymous. They're extremely helpful. Mm-hmm. And why is it taking that?
I think what she's saying is that it's, why aren't the police doing this? But it's not that easy.
Yeah, it's that medical examiner's report. That's what it is.
Yep.
I think that there are probably, if you were here before the show started and you were watching Dr. Verdes, one of the interviewer was a guy named Peter Ostro. Peter Ostro was a pathologist, and he taught pathology at the college level. And one of the things he said was, I'm not a toxicologist, so were the levels of drugs in Amanda's body, and then Dr. Verdes goes, were they lethal? Yeah, right? So even a trained pathologist, a person who not only is a trained pathologist himself, but trains other pathologists, doesn't know toxicology. And it would not surprise me if police looking at the reports also don't know toxicology. They just go, oh, well, the medical examiner says accident. It's an accident.
And yet 4 signatures from medical examiners signed that report.
Yep. Hey, Alicia just wanted to remind everybody that in 11 days on February 25th at 1 p.m. right in front of City Hall is another rally. And
we'll put that in the description after this.
Yeah, we'd really love your support. The more people that we can get out there, the better.
Yeah, all the people that are saying stuff here, and it's not something new. We hear all the time, why is it like this? What can we do? And again, sign up with Amanda's Army, keep, subscribe to our channel, go to these rallies, keep in touch with everybody. That's, it's going to be public pressure that happens on the medical examiner's office. It's not going to come from, seeing somebody on the street. It's going to be a public pressure thing.
Yeah. Hey, Barbara, this is actually a good question. She says, any luck finding a judge to reverse the overdose to homicide? So there's actually a process, and a judge won't help. We have to have a medical examiner do it. Now, we could do it on a state level. If we could find a medical examiner that could say, come on, guys, that is not an overdose, then at the state level, we might be able to get that cause of death changed. What we really want to happen, though, is for Erie County to do the right thing and look at this again. I mean, there's a new DA. There are new MEs. Take a look at this again. If you're watching this, guys, and if anybody knows Mr. Flynn, the DA, or any assistant DA in the office, or any of the anybody at City Hall, right? Any of the MEs.
It's not hard to look up their phone number or their address to write a letter.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, write a letter. That's a very good idea. Let's see if there's any. There are a couple of other things here. Timothy Jackson. Seems like there's great credibility in the numerous professional options support this. I remember seeing a video and playlist with Dennis Delano for Buffalo Cold Case Detective Green. Yeah, Dennis Delano, guys, was so helpful in this case. Many people know him in Buffalo. He's a little bit of a known person, a famous person as a former homicide detective. And he said his words were, you don't put yourself into a garbage can. Somebody put you there, right? Yeah.
And we've heard from, other members of the Buffalo Police Department who want to remain anonymous, probably for obvious reasons, who have concurred with that. Or have at least heavily hinted toward they feel the same way.
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, we've talked with people at BPD. We've talked to people at the New York State Troopers. But that one domino has to fall first.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Now, I don't know, Rick, if we get any other questions, I'm really happy to take them, but I feel like we've covered the case pretty well. I hope that
I think so.
I hope that there are new people that haven't seen this before that are here,
That's the whole idea. Yeah.
that are watching this, that are as outraged as we are and just want to help. Okay.
Yeah. And if you are new, go back and watch the previous videos to really get a good grasp of this case, and there's links below
Yep.
in our description, to those videos.
Yeah. Check them out. Please like this video. Continue to comment on it after it is no longer a live stream and it's published as a video. Please subscribe to the channel. Those are the things that it sounds self-serving, and it is just a little bit, but those are the things that will help get more eyeballs on this, and will get more outrage, and hopefully push to get this changed. Right?
Yep. And let's thank Amanda's family for being so open and in helping us to help the case, and also joining us here tonight. So
you guys are
we
amazing.
We appreciate that.
Leslie, we love you. Thank you so much for letting us try to help you on this case. Danielle, Glenn, Stephen, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you, and we stand with you. As we finish this up, I met with Leslie and Danielle recently, and Leslie had a DVD, which was a kind of a photo collage slideshow that they showed at Amanda's memorial service. So we'd like to share that as we go out. Please keep the comments coming.
This is a good time to grab some tissues.
Yeah, it's because remember, Amanda, it's really easy to just go, she was a 20-year-old, she was a drug addict, she was a prostitute, she was all these things that everybody just throws out. But no, Amanda was a little girl who was raised by loving parents who had brothers and sisters who cared for her. And this.
She had her entire life ahead of her. She was a puppy,
She did. And you know what? I hope Danielle doesn't mind me saying this, but Danielle was in the same boat as Amanda. They were doing it together. Mm-hmm. And when I look at Danielle, I'm just as impressed as I possibly be. Like we're close in age. I'm a little more than a decade older than her, but I look at her, and as a father, I go, yes, you are awesome. And Amanda had that ahead of her too. She was turning the corner, and it's freaking hard to turn that corner after 4 years of drug addiction. But Danielle did it, and Amanda was going to do it too.
Yeah.
And Antoine Garner, in my opinion, stole that from her.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.